After a brutal battle that leaves the kingdom celebrating victory, one terrifying mystery remains unsolved. The Alpha King's legendary wolf refuses every healer, warrior, and servant who tries to approach it. Covered in blood and driven by silent rage, the beast has never allowed another soul to touch it. Everyone believes anyone who gets close will die. Yet a forgotten servant girl, whose only duty is cleaning the abandoned kennels, quietly approaches the wounded creature. Instead of attacking, the beast lowers its head as she gently washes away the blood. The entire castle witnesses the impossible. Rumors spread overnight. Some believe she carries an ancient blessing. Others whisper she is connected to an old prophecy that even the Alpha King has tried to erase. As hidden enemies begin hunting the mysterious girl, the Alpha King realizes the beast recognizes something in her that no one else can see. The truth behind that silent bond could either save the kingdom, or destroy the Alpha bloodline forever. The celebration ended long before the silence did. Smoke still drifted across the castle courtyard where hundreds of warriors had gathered after the greatest victory the kingdom had seen in decades. Broken shields lay scattered across the stone. Crimson stains stretched between overturned banners. The smell of rain mixed with iron lingered in the cold evening air, refusing to disappear. No one dared speak above a whisper. Their eyes were fixed on a single creature. The Alpha King's legendary beast sat alone beneath the ancient archway leading into the royal fortress. Its enormous body was coated in dried blood from head to tail. Some of it belonged to enemies. Some belonged to the beast itself. Deep claw wounds crossed its shoulders, yet it remained perfectly still, breathing slowly as though the pain meant nothing. Its glowing amber eyes watched every movement. Not one soldier stepped closer. Everyone knew the stories. The beast had protected the Alpha bloodline for longer than anyone could remember. It had fought beside kings before the oldest elder in the kingdom had even been born. It obeyed only one command: the Alpha King's. Even then, it allowed no hands except his near its body. Every healer who had ever attempted to clean its wounds had been chased away with a single terrifying growl. No servant had survived approaching it without permission. Tonight looked no different. The royal physician slowly carried a leather satchel filled with herbs and clean cloth. He stopped several steps away. The beast lifted its head. Its lips curled back. A low growl rolled through the courtyard like distant thunder. The physician froze. His hands trembled. One more step would have meant death. Without saying a word, he slowly backed away. No one judged him. No one would have been brave enough to continue. The Alpha King stood nearby with his generals. Silent. His dark cloak moved gently in the evening wind while his sharp eyes remained fixed on the beast. Victory should have brought relief. Instead, exhaustion weighed heavily upon him. He knew that beneath the dried blood were wounds growing worse with every passing moment. But forcing the beast to accept treatment had never been possible. It had always decided for itself. That unbreakable rule had existed for generations. No one questioned it. Around the courtyard, servants quietly began removing broken weapons and carrying away damaged armor. Most deliberately stayed as far from the beast as possible. Among them walked a young servant carrying 2 wooden buckets filled with warm water. Her name was Elara. Few people inside the castle even remembered it. To nearly everyone, she was simply the kennel girl. She cleaned abandoned animal shelters. She scrubbed stone floors. She washed blood from walls after battles. If someone needed unpleasant work done, they called for Elara. No one asked how she felt. No one cared where she came from. Years of living unnoticed had taught her to lower her eyes whenever nobles passed. It was safer that way. As she crossed the courtyard, another servant hurried beside her. "Don't even look at it," the older woman whispered nervously. Elara followed her gaze. The massive wolf seemed almost unreal beneath the fading sunlight. Its fur, though hidden beneath blood, still carried streaks of silver beneath the crimson stains. Its breathing sounded heavier than before. One paw remained lifted slightly from the ground. "Injured." The older servant shook her head. They'll leave it alone until morning. Elara frowned. It will suffer all night. The beast always suffers alone. The woman quickly walked away before anyone noticed their conversation. Elara remained standing. Her eyes stayed on the creature. She had spent years caring for injured hunting dogs abandoned after royal expeditions. She had learned something long ago. Pain often looked like anger. Fear often sounded like rage. The wolf lowered its head again. A single drop of blood fell onto the stone beneath it. Another followed. Elara tightened her grip on the bucket. She should keep walking. She should pretend she had seen nothing. That was what everyone else was doing. Yet something deep inside refused to move. Not because she was fearless. She wasn't. Her heartbeat pounded so loudly she could barely hear the wind. But loneliness recognized loneliness. She knew that feeling better than anyone. The Alpha King noticed movement from the corner of his eye. One servant had stopped walking. He frowned. She was staring directly at the beast. One captain immediately noticed. "You!" His voice echoed across the courtyard. "What are you doing?" Elara quickly bowed her head. "My lord." "Move away." She nodded. She truly intended to obey. She took one step backward. Then the beast let out a low, exhausted breath. Not another growl. Not another warning. Just weariness. The sound stopped her. She slowly looked back. The wound across the creature's shoulder had opened again. Fresh blood trickled down its front leg. Something inside her heart ached. She remembered a small hunting dog years ago. Everyone had called it dangerous after it had bitten a stable worker. No one realized it had only been trying to protect a broken leg. After she cleaned the wound, it never bit anyone again. The memory refused to leave her. Without fully realizing it, she picked up one bucket. Gasps spread through the courtyard. What is she doing? Has she lost her mind? Stop her! Several guards immediately reached for their weapons. The Alpha King raised one hand. No one moved. His eyes narrowed with curiosity rather than anger. He wanted to see what madness had possessed a servant girl to approach the one creature every warrior feared. Elara walked slowly. One careful step. Then another. The enormous wolf lifted its head. Its glowing eyes locked onto hers. The courtyard fell completely silent. Even the wind seemed to disappear. She stopped several feet away. Her hands shook so badly that water rippled inside the wooden bucket. The beast stared. He stared back. Not with defiance. Not with courage. Only quiet sadness. She slowly lowered herself onto one knee. Her breathing remained calm despite the terror racing through every part of her body. She placed the bucket on the stone. From inside her apron she removed a clean white cloth. The wolf did not move. Every soldier expected the attack to come. One leap. One bite. One scream. Does it? Elara dipped the cloth into the warm water. She reached forward. Slowly. Carefully. Her fingers came within inches of the blood-covered fur. The Alpha King unconsciously stepped forward. His generals watched without breathing. The wolf's amber eyes softened almost imperceptibly. Then something happened that no living soul had ever witnessed. The beast lowered its enormous head. Not in surrender. Not in weakness. But in quiet acceptance. Elara gently pressed the warm cloth against the dried blood covering its shoulder. The courtyard erupted into stunned silence so absolute that even the crackling torches seemed impossibly loud. No growl came. No attack followed. Only the slow sound of blood washing away beneath trembling hands. And in that single impossible moment, the Alpha King realized everything he believed about the legendary guardian of his bloodline might have been wrong. Not a single voice broke the silence. Every noble, soldier, and servant stood frozen as though time itself had stopped inside the castle courtyard. The beast remained perfectly still. Its enormous chest rose and fell with slow, measured breaths while Elara carefully cleaned the blood matted into its silver fur. She worked with gentle movements, never rushing, never pulling at the wounded flesh. She treated the legendary guardian exactly as she had treated every abandoned hunting dog that had crossed her path over the years. To her, pain deserved kindness before fear. The Alpha King watched every movement. His expression remained unreadable, but his thoughts refused to settle. He had known the beast since childhood. It had carried him through battles, protected him from assassins, stood beside his father until the old king's final breath. Yet not once had it ever bowed its head for another soul. Not once. Something impossible had just happened. And impossible things always carried consequences. One of the royal advisors slowly stepped beside the Alpha King. "My king," he whispered. "This cannot be allowed." The Alpha King did not look away from Elara. "Why? If the people believe she has influence over the Guardian, rumors will spread through every village before sunrise. They already have." The advisor lowered his eyes. The king was right. Even now servants were exchanging frightened glances. Some looked at Elara with awe, others with suspicion. Several quietly stepped farther away from her, as though merely standing nearby might invite ancient magic into their lives. Elara noticed none of it. She focused entirely on the deep wound beneath the beast's shoulder. The blood had hardened into thick patches that pulled painfully against the torn skin. Warm water slowly softened the dried stains until clean silver fur began appearing beneath them. For the first time, the creature looked less like a monster, and more like an exhausted guardian. Its eyes slowly closed. A quiet breath escaped its muzzle. Several soldiers stared in disbelief. "Is it sleeping?" "No. It trusts her." Those words spread across the courtyard faster than wildfire. Trust. No one had ever connected that word with the legendary beast. Fear, respect, power. Those were the words spoken whenever its name was mentioned. Trust belonged to another world entirely. The Alpha King took one slow step closer. The beast immediately opened its eyes. Not with anger, only awareness. The king stopped. Even after all these years, the creature still watched him carefully, as though asking permission to continue. The king gave the slightest nod. The beast lowered its head once more. Elara remained unaware of the silent exchange. She dipped the cloth into fresh water before gently wiping another streak of blood away. As more of the silver coat appeared, something unexpected caught her attention. Beneath the shoulder wound, there was a faded mark. Not a scar, not an injury. Symbol, almost hidden beneath the fur. Its shape resembled a crescent moon wrapped around an ancient tree. She frowned. It looked strangely familiar. For only a heartbeat, a distant memory flickered through her mind. An old wooden pendant. A symbol carved into its surface. The only object she had possessed as a child before it mysteriously disappeared years ago. Her fingers paused. The beast slowly turned its head toward her. Its amber eyes met hers. There was no threat inside them, only recognition, as though it had been searching for someone, and had finally found them. A chill ran down Elara's spine. She quickly looked away. The strange feeling disappeared as quickly as it had come. She continued cleaning. High above the courtyard, hidden behind a narrow stone balcony, another pair of eyes watched everything. The Lord Chancellor, the most powerful noble beneath the Alpha King. His expression darkened. He had served 3 generations of rulers. Very little surprised him anymore. This frightened him. He recognized the symbol beneath the beast's fur. He recognized the way the guardian had lowered its head. And he recognized the impossible danger standing beside it. His fingers tightened around the balcony railing. "It cannot be her." His voice barely escaped as a whisper. It was buried. It ended years ago. Behind him stood another noble. "What shall we do?" The Chancellor never looked away from the courtyard. "Watch her. If she learns the truth." He allowed the sentence to remain unfinished. He did not need to say the rest. Some secrets destroyed kingdoms. Back below, The final traces of blood disappeared from the beast's shoulder. Clean silver fur shimmered beneath the fading sunlight. The wound itself remained serious, but no longer hidden. Elara quietly tore strips of fresh linen before placing them gently over the injured flesh. The beast never resisted. It leaned ever so slightly toward her, almost imperceptibly, almost like gratitude. The movement sent another wave of whispers across the courtyard. Several warriors instinctively stepped backward. One elderly servant covered her mouth. "I've lived 60 years. I've never seen kindness returned by that creature." The Alpha King finally approached. His heavy boots echoed across the stone. Elara immediately stood and lowered her head. She expected punishment, perhaps imprisonment, perhaps exile for touching the royal guardian without permission. She dared not breathe. The king stopped only a few steps away. His eyes moved from the cleaned wound to the calm beast, and finally to the frightened servant before him. "What is your name?" His voice carried neither anger nor warmth, only curiosity. Elara swallowed carefully. "My king. My name is Elara." Silence followed. The king studied her face. There was nothing remarkable about her appearance. No noble clothing. No royal markings. No obvious sign explaining what everyone had witnessed. Only tired eyes belonging to someone who had spent years believing she would never matter. The king asked another question. "Were you afraid?" She answered honestly. "Yes." "Then why did you come?" She hesitated, because she did not know how to explain it. Finally she spoke. "It looked lonely." Those 4 words struck the courtyard harder than any battle cry. The soldiers looked at one another. Lonely. No one had ever imagined the kingdom's most feared creature could feel something so painfully ordinary. The Alpha King slowly turned toward the beast. Its golden eyes remained peacefully closed. For the first time in many years, it looked at rest. A memory surfaced inside the king's mind. His father speaking beside a fireplace long ago. "One day the guardian will recognize someone before we do. When that day comes, do not fear the one it chooses. Fear the reason it had to choose at all." The king had dismissed those words as nothing more than old legends. No, they no longer felt like legends. Night settled over the castle. Torches were lit across the walls. Servants slowly returned to their duties. But no one forgot what they had seen. By midnight, stories had already begun spreading beyond the castle gates. Some claimed the servant girl possessed forgotten magic. Others insisted she carried the blessing of the moon goddess herself. A few whispered something even more dangerous. That the legendary guardian had not chosen a servant. It had recognized its true protector. Far above the sleeping kingdom, hidden behind storm clouds, the full moon emerged. And beneath its pale silver light, the beast slowly opened its eyes. It looked not toward the Alpha King, not toward the castle, but toward the small servants' quarters where Elara slept, as though it intended to guard her now, just as it had once sworn to guard someone else. The next morning, the castle awakened long before sunrise. Yet no one spoke about the victory anymore. The battlefield had been forgotten. Every hallway, every kitchen, every training yard echoed with only one story. The servant girl, beast, and the impossible moment that had changed everything. Whispers followed Elara wherever she walked. Some servants moved aside as she passed, lowering their heads with unexpected respect. Others refused to stand near her at all, making protective signs against ancient curses whenever she entered a room. No one knew which rumor to believe. Some claimed she carried the blessing of the moon goddess. Others insisted she was the last descendant of a forgotten royal bloodline. A few whispered that she had bewitched the Alpha King's guardian. Elara ignored every word. She had spent her entire life being invisible. Now every eye followed her. Neither life felt comfortable. She carried fresh buckets of water toward the abandoned kennels, hoping the familiar work would quiet her restless thoughts. She found the massive silver beast already waiting outside. It lay peacefully beneath the old oak tree, its injured shoulder wrapped in the linen she had tied the night before. The castle guards stood nearly 50 feet away. None dared approach. They simply watched. The moment Elara stepped into the yard, the beast slowly raised its head. Its amber eyes brightened. Then, with surprising ease, it stood and walked toward her. Every guard instinctively reached for his weapon. The beast ignored them completely. Stopped directly in front of Elara. She looked up, startled. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered softly. The creature lowered its head again. Not as deeply as before. Just enough for her to understand. It wanted her to examine the wound. Her heartbeat quickened. The guards exchanged stunned glances. One of them hurried toward the palace. The king must see this. Within minutes, the Alpha King arrived with several royal advisors. He remained silent as he watched the enormous guardian patiently waiting before the servant girl. Elara carefully removed the linen. The wound looked cleaner. The swelling had already begun to fade. She smiled faintly. "You're healing." The beast released a slow breath that almost sounded like satisfaction. The Alpha King noticed something unexpected. The creature's breathing had become calmer. Its usual tension had vanished. It was changing. Not because of herbs. Not because of magic. Because of her presence. One elderly advisor stepped forward. "My king, this cannot continue." The Alpha King's eyes remained fixed on the scene. "Why? If the guardian obeys another, it obeys no one." The advisor hesitated. "Then why does it seek her?" The king had no answer. That silence troubled him more than any explanation could. Elara gently replaced the bandages before stepping backward. The beast remained where it was, watching her, waiting. Only after she returned to carrying her water buckets did it quietly follow. Not close enough to frighten her. Not far enough to lose sight of her. Every servant who witnessed the strange procession stopped working. The legendary guardian, following a kennel servant. It was beyond belief. By midday, the story had spread through every corner of the kingdom. In the royal archives, hidden beneath the oldest tower, the Alpha King stood before shelves untouched for generations. Dust-covered ancient scrolls tied with faded silver cords. Books written by forgotten kings lined the stone walls. He had come searching for one thing: an explanation. The royal archivist carefully placed several enormous volumes onto a wooden table. "My king," the old man said quietly, "these records haven't been opened since your grandfather ruled. Find everything concerning the guardian." Hours passed. Page after page described great battles, victorious kings, ancient wars. Nothing explained yesterday. Near the end of a weathered manuscript, one sentence caught his attention. "The guardian shall bow only before the one bound by the first promise." The Alpha King's eyes narrowed. The first promise. He had never heard those words before. He turned several more pages. The remaining text had been deliberately removed. Not damaged by age. Cut away. Someone had erased the rest. His jaw tightened. Who altered this? The archivist leaned closer. His face slowly paled. It wasn't time that destroyed those pages. They were taken. When? I cannot say. But whoever did it knew exactly what they wanted to hide. The king closed the book. Someone inside the royal family had erased part of their own history. That frightened him more than the missing words themselves. Elsewhere in the castle, the Lord Chancellor stood inside a private chamber lit by only one candle. Across from him waited 3 influential nobles. None spoke until the heavy door locked behind them. "The reports are true," one noble finally said. "The guardian seeks the girl willingly." Another looked uneasy. "If people begin believing she was chosen, they will start asking questions." The Chancellor slowly nodded. And questions lead to forgotten answers. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, one noble whispered the thought none wished to speak aloud. Could she be connected to The promise? The Chancellor's expression hardened instantly. No. That bloodline ended. We made certain of it. His own words sounded less convincing than he intended. Deep inside, doubt had already begun growing. Back outside, evening shadows stretched across the gardens. Elara finally found a quiet moment beside the old fountain hidden behind the servant quarters. For the first time all day, she sat alone, or so she believed. Moments later, soft footsteps echoed behind her. The beast emerged silently from between the trees. It carried something carefully between its jaws. Not prey, not meat. A single white flower. Its petals shimmered beneath the fading sunlight. The creature walked toward her slowly before placing the flower gently beside her feet. Then it sat, watching, waiting. Elara stared in disbelief. She had heard stories of wolves bringing trophies from hunts. Never flowers. She picked it up carefully. The blossom carried a faint, familiar fragrance. For reasons she couldn't explain. It reminded her of childhood, of warm hands, of a gentle lullaby she could no longer remember. A strange sadness filled her heart. The beast quietly rested beside her. Neither moved, neither needed to. Far away, hidden behind the stone columns overlooking the garden, the Alpha King watched the entire scene unfold. His confusion deepened with every passing moment. The guardian wasn't merely tolerating the servant anymore. It was protecting her, comforting her, remembering her. And somewhere beneath the oldest wing of the castle, a locked chamber that had remained sealed for more than 20 years trembled ever so slightly, as though something buried beneath forgotten history had finally begun to awaken. Morning faded into evening, yet the strange events surrounding Elara refused to end. The castle had become a place divided by invisible lines. Some believed the servant girl had been blessed. Others believed she had brought a curse. No one remained neutral anymore. Even the youngest servants noticed that whenever Elara entered a room, conversations stopped instantly. Faces turned toward her before quickly looking away. Every smile carried uncertainty. Every whisper disappeared the moment she came close. She had never wanted attention. Now she could not escape it. She carried another basket of clean linen through the eastern corridor when an elderly maid quietly reached for her arm. "You should leave the castle." Elara blinked in surprise. "Leave?" The old woman nodded nervously. "There are people here who fear what they cannot understand. They smile during the day. They make plans during the night." Before Elara could ask another question, the woman hurried away, refusing to say anything more. Those words remained with her long after the corridor became empty. Far above the castle, heavy clouds slowly gathered around the mountains. A cold wind swept across the stone walls. It felt as though the kingdom itself was waiting. Inside the royal library, the Alpha King continued searching through forgotten records. Every ancient scroll seemed to raise another question instead of providing answers. One manuscript described the guardian as more than a beast, called the creature the first protector. Another referred to an oath sworn beneath the first moon. Yet every record stopped before revealing who had taken that oath. Entire pages had disappeared. Whole chapters had been carefully removed. Not burned. Not damaged. Cut away with deliberate precision. The Alpha King closed another empty volume. Someone had erased generations of history. Not by accident. By design. The royal archivist stood nearby. "My king. There is one place we have not searched." The king looked up. "The Hall of Ancestors." The old man's expression immediately grew uneasy. "No one has entered its lower chamber since your father's reign. The records there were sealed under royal command." "Why? I was never told." The king slowly stood. "Then we begin there." Elsewhere, beneath the western tower, the Lord Chancellor walked through a hidden passage lit only by flickering torches. The stone corridor ended at an iron door guarded by absolute silence. Only one person besides the Alpha King possessed a key. Chancellor. He unlocked the heavy door and stepped inside. The chamber held dozens of wooden chests covered in dust. Each chest carried the same carved symbol, a crescent moon embracing an ancient tree. The very symbol Elara had seen beneath the guardian's fur. The Chancellor knelt before one chest. His hands trembled slightly. Inside rested faded scrolls tied with black ribbons. He opened one. A painted family tree appeared across brittle parchment. Most of the names had been crossed out with dark ink. One final branch, ended with a single word. Unknown. The Chancellor stared at it for several long moments. It cannot be. He carefully rolled the parchment closed. If she truly survived, everything they had sacrificed years ago would become meaningless. His face hardened once again. The servant girl could never learn the truth. Outside, Elara returned to the quiet garden behind the old kennels. It had become the only place where she could think without hearing whispers. The guardian already waited beneath the ancient oak. The moment it saw her, it slowly rose. Its wound had almost completely healed. She smiled softly. "You recover faster than anyone expected." The great wolf stepped closer. Its enormous head lowered beside her shoulder. Instead of fear, Elara felt peace. She gently brushed her fingers through the clean silver fur. The guardian closed its eyes. For several quiet moments, neither moved. The world around them seemed to disappear. A sudden image flashed across Elara's mind. A moonlit forest. The sound of wolves howling together. A woman's gentle voice singing. Warm hands placing a wooden pendant around the neck of a little girl. The same crescent moon. The same ancient tree. Darkness. Fire. Running footsteps. Someone shouting. Child crying. The vision disappeared as suddenly as it had begun. Elara stumbled backward. Her breathing became uneven. The guardian instantly opened its eyes. It stepped between her and the surrounding trees, scanning the shadows as though sensing danger. What was that? She pressed a trembling hand against her forehead. Nothing around her had changed. Yet something inside her had. For the first time in years. She remembered fragments of her childhood. Very small fragments. But enough to know she had forgotten something important. Something that had been taken from her. High above the garden, hidden behind carved stone columns, the Alpha King watched once again. He had followed the guardian, not Elara. Yet every path the beast chose somehow led back to her. He had witnessed countless battles, countless betrayals. But he had never seen the guardian react this way toward another person. It was no longer simple trust. It was protection. The creature watched every direction before allowing Elara to rest. It positioned itself between her and every possible threat, as though fulfilling an ancient duty. The king's thoughts returned to his father's final words. When the guardian chooses, the kingdom must remember what it has forgotten. At the time, he had believed grief had clouded the old king's mind. No, those words carried frightening meaning. That night, the castle slept beneath gathering storm clouds. Rain began falling softly across the rooftops. Inside the servant quarters, Elara struggled to rest. The strange vision refused to leave her mind. She remembered the pendant, the song, the forest. Yet every time she reached for another memory, slipped away. Finally, exhaustion claimed her. But outside her small window, two glowing amber eyes watched silently through the rain. The guardian had not returned to the royal courtyard. It had remained beside her quarters, standing watch. Hours passed. Not once did it move. Far beyond the castle walls, hidden among the trees, several cloaked riders emerged from the darkness. They stopped upon a distant ridge overlooking the fortress. One rider lowered a spyglass. The reports were true. The guardian has chosen someone. Another rider asked quietly, "Do we return to the Chancellor?" The leader slowly shook his head. "No. We find the girl first. If she remembers who she is, It will already be too late. Lightning flashed across the night sky. For a single heartbeat, the riders disappeared into the storm, unseen by them. The guardian slowly lifted its head toward the distant forest. Its ears sharpened. Its body became perfectly still. It had sensed them. And for the first time since the great battle, the ancient protector growled. Not from pain, not from anger, but from the unmistakable warning that an old enemy had finally returned. The growl echoed through the sleeping kingdom. It was unlike any sound the castle guards had heard before. Not the roar of a predator. Not the warning of an angry beast. Carried urgency. Ancient. Protective. Every soldier on the night watch immediately reached for his weapon. Torches flared to life along the castle walls as captains shouted orders across the courtyard. Archers rushed toward the battlements while patrols searched every entrance leading into the fortress. No enemy could be seen. Yet the guardian refused to calm. Its silver fur stood on end as it stared toward the dark forest beyond the eastern mountains. The Alpha King emerged from the palace moments later, fastening his cloak as rain soaked the stone beneath his boots. The guardian never growled without reason. Never. He followed its gaze toward the endless trees. Only darkness answered him. Somehow. He knew the beast had sensed something the rest of them could not. "Double the patrols," he ordered quietly. "No one enters or leaves the castle until sunrise." The commanders bowed and hurried away. Still, the guardian remained motionless, watching, waiting, as though an old nightmare had awakened beyond the horizon. Inside the servant quarters, Elara opened her eyes before dawn. The strange dream had returned. Again she saw the moonlit forest. Again she heard the soft lullaby. Again she reached for the woman whose face remained hidden behind silver light. This time, she remembered something new. Voice. "One day the guardian will find you. When it does, never run from it." She sat upright, breathing heavily. The words felt real. Not imagined. Memory. But whose voice had spoken them? She pressed her hands against her temples. The harder she tried to remember, the more the memories scattered like mist. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. An elderly servant stood outside. "The Alpha King requests your presence." Fear returned instantly. She had spoken to the king only once. Why would he summon her now? The royal audience chamber felt larger than ever before. Morning light poured through towering windows, casting long shadows across the polished stone floor. The Alpha King stood alone beside the great throne. No advisors, no guards, only silence. Elara stopped several steps away before lowering her head respectfully. "You asked for me, my king." The king studied her quietly. She looked exactly as she had the day before. Simple clothing, tired eyes. Nothing about her explained the impossible events surrounding the guardian. Yet impossible events continued happening. "You slept." She hesitated. "Not well." "You dreamed." Her eyes widened. "How did you know?" "Because the guardian never leaves the palace during the night." He paused. "Last night it guarded your window until sunrise." Elara struggled to respond. "Why?" The king slowly shook his head. "That is the question I hoped you could answer." Silence settled between them. Finally he spoke again. "Tell me everything you remember about your childhood." Elara lowered her gaze. "There isn't much to tell. I was found near the southern villages after a winter storm. I don't remember my parents. I don't remember where I came from. I only remember waking inside an orphan house." The king listened carefully. "No family." She shook her head. "No name before Elara. No memories. No home. Only one thing remained vivid." She reached beneath the collar of her dress. Around her neck hung a thin leather cord. Nothing was attached to it. "I used to wear something here. A pendant. I lost it years ago. I don't remember how." The Alpha King's expression changed almost imperceptibly. "A pendant." She nodded. "It had strange markings. I can never remember them clearly. Before the king could ask another question, a loud knock echoed through the chamber doors. A royal messenger hurried inside. My king, the Eastern Patrol has returned. They found footprints. What kind? The soldier swallowed carefully. Not human. Not wolf. Something older. The king's eyes darkened. Prepare the council. Hours later, the royal council gathered around a massive stone table. Maps covered its surface. Reports from scouts lay scattered across them. The atmosphere felt heavier than ever. One captain pointed toward the eastern border. The tracks appeared only last night. They approached the kingdom, but never crossed into it. Another commander frowned, as though whoever made them was watching us. The Lord Chancellor remained unusually quiet. Too quiet. The Alpha King noticed. You recognize something. It was not a question. The Chancellor slowly folded his hands. There are stories. Old stories. About those who once hunted the Guardian. Several nobles exchanged uneasy glances. One whispered, I thought they were myths. So did I. The Chancellor avoided the king's eyes. But myths often begin as history. The Alpha King leaned forward. Explain. The Chancellor hesitated only briefly. Long ago, there existed an order that believed whoever controlled the Guardian could rule every wolf kingdom. They searched for generations. They failed. The order disappeared. Or so we believed. The room fell silent. Every noble understood the implication. If those hunters had returned, they had not come for the Alpha King. They had come for the Guardian. Or for the girl it had chosen. Outside the council chamber, Elara wandered through the palace gardens. She preferred staying far from political discussions she could never understand. The rain had stopped. Small drops still clung to every flower. She knelt beside a white blossom identical to the one the Guardian had brought her. Its fragrance awakened another faint memory. A woman's laughter. Warm sunlight. Someone placing fresh flowers beside an ancient stone monument. She reached toward the blossom. Suddenly, the Guardian appeared beside her. Not walking. Running. Its massive body moved faster than she had ever seen before. Before Elara could react, the beast stepped directly in front of her. Its ears flattened. Its amber eyes locked onto a nearby hedge. A low growl rumbled deep within its chest. Elara froze. What is it? No answer came. Only silence. A small silver arrow shot from the bushes. The Guardian moved instantly. The arrow struck its shoulder instead of Elara. The beast roared. A deafening sound that shook birds from the surrounding trees. Dark figures burst from the hedges and fled toward the outer walls. Hidden attackers. They had been watching her. Waiting. The Guardian ignored its fresh wound. Instead, it chased the fleeing shadows with terrifying speed. Within seconds, the peaceful garden erupted into chaos. The peaceful gardens became a battlefield within seconds. Castle guards poured through every archway. Swords drawn as alarms echoed across the fortress. The hidden attackers disappeared between hedges and stone pathways, moving with frightening speed as if they already knew every corner of the royal grounds. The Guardian pursued them without hesitation. Despite the fresh arrow buried deep in its shoulder, the great silver wolf ran with terrifying determination. Every leap carried the force of a storm. Every roar shook the trees surrounding the gardens. The attackers never turned to fight. They were not trying to kill the Guardian. They were trying to escape. That alone disturbed the Alpha King. He arrived just as the last shadow vanished over the outer wall. What happened? He demanded. Captain knelt immediately. They were waiting for the servant, my king. The Guardian intercepted the attack. The king's expression hardened. So they were never hunting the beast. No, they came for her. His eyes slowly shifted toward Elara. She stood exactly where the attack had begun, still unable to understand why strangers would risk entering the royal castle simply to strike an unnoticed servant. Nothing about her life made sense anymore. The royal physician hurried toward the guardian. The great wolf remained standing, blood slowly dripping from the silver arrow lodged beneath its shoulder. The physician stopped several steps away. He looked toward Elara. "My king, I believe the guardian will only allow one person to remove it." The courtyard fell silent once again. The Alpha King slowly nodded. "Let her try." Every guard watched anxiously as Elara approached. The guardian turned toward her. His breathing slowed. The tension disappeared from its body. She gently rested one hand against its neck. "I know. It hurts." The beast lowered its head. Very carefully, Elara examined the wound. The arrow had not reached the heart. It had struck muscle instead. She tore a strip of clean cloth before wrapping it tightly around the wound. Then she gripped the shaft. "Stay still." The guardian never resisted. With one steady motion, she pulled the arrow free. The beast winced, but it never growled. Not once. The physician immediately stepped forward with healing herbs. This time, the guardian allowed him to approach. Only because Elara remained beside it. The Alpha King noticed every detail. The beast was not merely trusting her. It was trusting others through her. As though her presence reminded it that not every hand carried betrayal. Hours later, the captured arrow rested upon a stone table inside the council chamber. Every noble gathered around it. The weapon itself appeared ordinary. Its markings did not. Ancient silver runes had been carved into the metal. The royal blacksmith studied them carefully. "I have never seen symbols like these." The elderly archivist suddenly stepped closer. His face turned pale. "I have." Everyone looked toward him. He hesitated before speaking. "Only once. Many years ago. In a sealed manuscript." "What did they mean?" the Alpha King asked. The old man answered quietly. "They belonged to the Order of Ash." The chamber became silent. "The hunters," one noble whispered. The archivist nodded. They believed the guardian was not merely a protector. They believed it was the final key. The key to something hidden. The Lord Chancellor remained perfectly still. Too still. The Alpha King noticed. Again. Every mention of forgotten history seemed to make the Chancellor increasingly uncomfortable. That evening, the king ordered the oldest sealed chamber beneath the Hall of Ancestors opened. Dust filled the air as enormous stone doors slowly moved for the first time in decades. Inside stood forgotten statues of former rulers. Ancient banners hung from cracked walls. At the center rested a circular stone altar. Its surface carried the same familiar symbol. A crescent moon surrounding an ancient tree. The Alpha King's heart raced. Again. The same mark. The mark beneath the guardian's fur. The mark Elara had described from her Lost Pendant. The mark carved upon the hidden chests beneath the western tower. It was everywhere, yet no one had spoken its meaning. The king carefully brushed centuries of dust from the altar. Beneath it appeared faded words written in the oldest language of the kingdom. The royal archivist translated slowly. "When darkness rises, the guardian shall awaken. When the promise returns, the forgotten blood shall remember." The king looked toward him. "What is the promise?" The old scholar lowered his eyes. "I do not know." The remaining text was removed. Again. Another missing answer. Another erased piece of history. Someone had spent decades ensuring no one could uncover the complete truth. That night, Elara wandered alone through the castle chapel. She hoped the silence might calm the growing storm inside her mind. She found another memory. The moonlight passing through colored glass illuminated an old mural along the eastern wall. It showed an enormous silver wolf standing beside a young woman holding a glowing pendant. The moment Elara saw the painting, her vision blurred. Another memory flooded back. She was very small, holding someone's hand, standing before that very mural. A woman's voice whispered gently, "Never fear the guardian. It protects our promise." Flames, screams, running footsteps, man shouting, "Take the child! She must live!" Elara gasped. The memory vanished. She stumbled backward against the stone wall. Tears filled her eyes before she even understood why. Someone had protected her. Someone had died for her. But who? Before she could gather herself, soft footsteps echoed through the chapel. The Alpha King stood quietly in the doorway. He had seen her distress. He approached slowly. "What happened?" Elara looked at him with frightened eyes. "I remembered. Only pieces. But someone was trying to save me." The king remained silent. For reasons he could not explain. He believed her completely. Not because of evidence. Because the guardian had believed her first. Outside the chapel, hidden in the shadows beyond the stained glass windows, the Lord Chancellor watched them together. His expression was darker than ever before. He turned toward the cloaked figure waiting beside the garden wall. "It has begun." The stranger lowered his hood. "What are your orders?" The Chancellor's voice became cold. "If the girl remembers everything, our secret dies with her silence." The cloaked man nodded. "And the guardian?" The Chancellor looked toward the moonlit courtyard where the great silver wolf stood waiting. "For 20 years. It guarded the last witness. It must fail." As the assassin disappeared into the darkness, the guardian suddenly lifted its head. Its glowing amber eyes locked onto the distant shadows. It had sensed danger again. Only this time, the threat was not coming from beyond the kingdom. It was already inside the castle. The castle had never felt so quiet. Not after war. Not after victory. Not even after the deaths of former kings. Silence now carried something far more dangerous than grief. Carried suspicion. Every servant wondered whom they could trust. Every guard watched the man standing beside him. Every noble measured every word before speaking. Somewhere inside the castle walls, an enemy was hiding. The Alpha King stood alone upon the eastern balcony before sunrise. Below him, the kingdom slowly awakened beneath a blanket of silver mist. His eyes searched the forests beyond the walls. For years he had believed his greatest duty was protecting the kingdom from enemies beyond its borders. Now he understood the greater danger had lived inside the palace all along. Someone had erased history. Someone had buried the truth. Someone had waited decades for the wrong person to remember. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. It was the guardian. The great silver wolf quietly stopped beside the king. Its wounded shoulder had healed once again, though a faint scar remained where the assassin's arrow had struck. The king rested one hand upon the beast's neck. "You knew." His voice barely rose above a whisper. "You knew this day would come." The guardian remained silent. Yet its calm eyes seemed filled with memories no human could understand. The king closed his own eyes for a brief moment. His father had once told him that the guardian remembered every generation it had protected. Every promise. Every betrayal. Perhaps the beast had carried the weight of forgotten history alone for decades. Till now. Across the castle, Elara had not slept. Each passing hour brought another fragment of memory. Not enough to reveal the whole truth. Only enough to leave her heart aching. She remembered warm laughter. A forest filled with white flowers. A woman's gentle embrace. With fire. Smoke. Running. Fear. The memories ended there. Nothing beyond them existed. She stepped outside into the cool morning air, hoping to quiet her thoughts. The guardian was already waiting. As soon as she approached, it slowly walked beside her. Neither made a sound. They wandered toward the oldest part of the royal gardens where few people visited anymore. Broken statues stood beneath ancient trees. Stone pathways disappeared beneath vines. Time itself seemed forgotten there. Elara noticed something unusual. The guardian had not chosen this path by accident. It kept looking toward a weathered stone monument almost hidden beneath climbing ivy. Curiosity overcame hesitation. She brushed the vines aside. Beneath them appeared the familiar symbol, the crescent moon embracing an ancient tree. Again, always the same mark. Below it, faint letters remained carved into the stone. Age had nearly erased them. She carefully traced the worn inscription with trembling fingers. The instant her skin touched the carving, the world around her disappeared. She stood inside another memory. Not a dream, not imagination. Memory. The garden around her was alive. Flowers covered every pathway. Children laughed beneath the trees. The monument stood newly carved without cracks or vines. A little girl no older than 5 ran toward it. She wore a wooden pendant around her neck. The guardian walked beside her. Not as a terrifying beast, as a gentle protector. The child laughed while placing both tiny hands against its silver fur. Behind them stood a young woman dressed in white. Her face remained blurred, yet warmth radiated from her presence. She smiled as she watched the child. The promise will always protect you. Then another man entered the garden. His cloak bore the royal crest. He knelt before the little girl. We leave tonight. It isn't safe anymore. The woman's smile disappeared. She looked toward the distant castle. Fear entered her eyes. The council knows. The man nodded. They've betrayed us. Everything changed instantly. The peaceful garden vanished beneath smoke. Soldiers rushed through the trees. Flames climbed the palace walls. The woman placed the pendant around the little girl's neck. If we cannot return, remember only kindness. The guardian will remember the rest. Someone pulled the child away. The woman turned back toward the burning castle. In darkness, Elara collapsed onto the stone pathway. The vision ended so suddenly that she struggled to breathe. Tears streamed down her face. Not because she fully understood. Because she finally remembered enough to know someone had sacrificed everything for her. The guardian immediately lowered itself beside her. Its enormous head rested gently against her shoulder. Not to comfort itself. To comfort her. Moments later, hurried footsteps echoed through the garden. The Alpha King had arrived. He knelt beside Elara. What happened? She looked at him through tear-filled eyes. I saw them. My family. They knew someone would come for us. The king felt a chill run through him. What else? She closed her eyes. There was a pendant. The same symbol. And she hesitated. The council. They betrayed someone. The Alpha King's expression hardened. The council. Not an enemy kingdom. Not invaders. His own court. Before he could ask another question, a voice interrupted from behind. My king. The Lord Chancellor stood at the entrance of the garden. His expression remained calm. Almost too calm. You should not encourage these fantasies. Elara looked toward him. The moment their eyes met, another memory flashed. Only a single image. Chancellor. Younger. Standing beside burning buildings. Watching silently while soldiers carried a frightened child away. Her breathing stopped. She knew that face. She had seen it before. Not yesterday. 20 years ago. Without realizing it, she whispered. It was you. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. For the first time in decades, he understood the greatest secret in the kingdom was beginning to remember him. And that made Elara far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The garden fell into absolute silence. The Lord Chancellor did not flinch. For years he had mastered the art of hiding emotion behind a calm expression. His face remained composed, but behind his steady eyes, his thoughts raced. She remembered. Not everything, but enough. Enough to become dangerous. The Alpha King slowly turned toward the Chancellor. You know what she is talking about. It was not a question. The Chancellor answered with measured calm. My king, the poor girl has suffered terrible memories. Trauma often creates confusion. Elara shook her head immediately. No. I saw you. You were there. The Chancellor offered a sympathetic smile. You saw an old man because you see one before you now. The mind fills empty spaces with familiar faces. Several guards exchanged uncertain glances. His explanation sounded reasonable, yet something felt wrong. The Alpha King had watched the Chancellor for many years. Today, for the first time, he noticed the smallest crack beneath the man's confidence. It lasted only a heartbeat, but it was there. Fear. The Guardian suddenly stepped forward. Its massive body moved between Elara and the Chancellor. A deep growl echoed through the forgotten garden. Not loud, not violent, only unmistakable. The beast had made its choice. It did not trust the Chancellor. The old noble's smile disappeared. Very few people understood the Guardian better than he did. He knew exactly what that growl meant. Recognition. The Guardian remembered him. And it remembered far more than Elara did. For the first time in decades, the Chancellor took one careful step backward. The Alpha King noticed. You've never feared the Guardian before. The Chancellor answered quietly. I've learned not to challenge wounded animals. The king said nothing, but doubt settled deeper inside him. That afternoon, the Alpha King summoned only his most loyal captain. No council, no advisors, no chancellor. Only one man he had trusted since childhood. I have a task. The captain bowed. Anything, my king. I want every sealed record beneath this castle searched. Quietly. If anyone asks. You know nothing. The captain looked surprised. Not even the Chancellor. The king held his gaze. Especially not the Chancellor. The captain understood immediately. Something had changed. The king no longer trusted his oldest advisor. While the secret investigation began, Elara returned to the old monument. She could not stop thinking about the memories. The stone felt strangely familiar beneath her fingertips. The Guardian remained beside her, watching, protecting, almost waiting. As the evening sun slipped behind the mountains, Elara noticed something she had missed before. Near the monument's base, loose stone. She knelt carefully and brushed away years of dirt. The stone shifted. Beneath it rested a small wooden box wrapped in faded cloth. Her hands trembled. The cloth had nearly rotted away with age. Someone had hidden it there many years ago. Very slowly, she opened it. Inside lay only two things: a broken wooden pendant, and a folded letter sealed with faded wax. The crescent moon. The ancient tree. The same symbol again. The moment Elara touched the pendant, a powerful wave of memories surged through her. She remembered running through the burning palace gardens. She remembered the Guardian standing between her family and armed soldiers. She remembered a woman placing the pendant into the box before hiding it beneath the monument. She heard the woman's final words. If our daughter survives, the Guardian will lead her back here. Elara gasped. Our daughter. Tears rolled silently down her face. The woman had been her mother. The Guardian gently nudged the box toward her, as though it had known exactly where it rested all these years. She looked at the great silver wolf with new understanding. You remembered. The beast lowered its head. For 20 years, had remembered everything, while every human forgot. Far away beneath the western tower, the king's captain uncovered another hidden chamber. Unlike the archives, this room contained no books, only locked chests. Inside one chest rested dozens of official royal decrees. Each carried the seal of the former king. One document immediately caught the captain's attention. Its title read, The Decree of the First Promise. His heart pounded. He carefully opened the ancient parchment. Most of the writing remained untouched. Near the center, one sentence stood out. The Guardian shall forever protect the descendants of the First Promise, even above the command of the throne. The captain froze. Even above the throne. That explained everything. Why the Guardian chose Elara. Why it ignored royal commands whenever she was threatened. Why it guarded her every night. Its loyalty had never changed. The kingdom had simply forgotten the oath. The captain hurried toward the Alpha King's private chamber. But before he reached the stairs, a familiar voice stopped him. "You've found something." The Lord Chancellor emerged from the shadows. His expression was calm once again. "Come." The captain instinctively hid the document beneath his cloak. "It concerns the king." The Chancellor nodded slowly. "I know." Without warning, several cloaked assassins stepped silently from the darkness behind him. The captain reached for his sword. He fought bravely. Steel clashed against steel inside the narrow corridor. He managed to wound 2 attackers before another struck him from behind. The ancient document slipped across the stone floor. The Chancellor calmly picked it up. His eyes scanned the faded words. The last hope of keeping the truth buried had just fallen into his hands. He looked down at the wounded captain. "I spent 20 years protecting this kingdom. You call it betrayal. I call it survival." The captain struggled to rise. "The king will learn." The Chancellor quietly shook his head. "No. He will learn only what I allow him to learn." That exact moment, miles away in the royal gardens, the Guardian suddenly lifted its head. Its amber eyes widened. A painful howl escaped into the evening sky. Not from injury, not from anger, but from loss. Elara looked at the beast in alarm. "What happened?" The Guardian turned toward the palace. His body tensed. Its ancient instincts had sensed it. Someone loyal to the truth had fallen. And somewhere inside the castle, the greatest secret of the Alpha bloodline had been stolen once again. The Guardian's mournful howl rolled across the kingdom like a warning carried by the wind. Every wolf within the royal lands answered. From distant mountains, from forgotten forests, from hidden valleys, one howl became many. The night itself seemed to awaken. Inside the palace, servants stopped where they stood. Soldiers looked toward the dark sky in uneasy silence. Even the oldest nobles lowered their eyes, knowing such a chorus had not been heard in generations. The Alpha King stepped onto the palace balcony. The Guardian stood below, facing the eastern horizon. Its amber eyes no longer reflected confusion. They reflected certainty. Whatever had been hidden for 20 years had finally reached its breaking point. In the garden, Elara still held the broken wooden pendant. The faded carving matched every symbol she had seen throughout the castle. The crescent moon embracing the ancient tree. Only now did she understand why the Guardian had brought her here. It had not been leading her through coincidence. It had been leading her home. She carefully unfolded the old letter hidden beside the pendant. The parchment had aged, but the ink remained surprisingly clear. The handwriting was elegant, yet hurried. It spoke of an ancient promise sworn between the Alpha bloodline and a family chosen to guard the kingdom's honor. It warned that power would one day tempt those who valued control over truth. If that day ever came, the Guardian would protect the last living descendant of the promise until the truth could be restored. The letter ended before revealing every detail. The final section had been torn away. Someone had found it years ago. Someone had removed the ending. Elara closed her eyes. Even now, the truth was still incomplete. The Guardian suddenly turned toward the palace. Its ears stood high. Its body stiffened. Without hesitation it began running. Not toward the forest, toward the royal fortress. Elara immediately followed. She had no idea what had happened, but she trusted the Guardian completely. At the same moment, the Alpha King reached the hidden corridor beneath the western tower. His most trusted captain had failed to report. That alone was enough to raise alarm. He descended the narrow stone staircase with only 2 loyal guards beside him. The air felt cold. The silence felt unnatural. Halfway through the corridor, they found blood. The king rushed forward. His captain lay against the wall, still breathing, though only barely. "My king!" The wounded man struggled to speak. "The decree. The Chancellor. His strength faded. The Alpha King knelt beside him. Stay with me. The captain slowly raised one trembling hand. He took it. Before another word could be spoken, his hand fell. The corridor became silent once more. The Alpha King closed the captain's eyes with deep sorrow. He had lost many warriors in battle. This loss felt different. This was betrayal, not war. His gaze slowly lifted. For the first time since becoming king, anger replaced restraint. Above them, the Lord Chancellor entered the Grand Assembly Hall carrying the stolen decree. Several influential nobles already waited. Some looked nervous. Others avoided meeting his eyes. The Chancellor placed the ancient document upon the long council table. Our time has ended. One noble looked confused. What do you mean? The girl remembers. The Guardian has chosen openly. The king already doubts us. Silence spread through the chamber. Another noble whispered. Perhaps we should confess. The Chancellor's eyes hardened instantly. And surrender everything. We preserved this kingdom. We protected stability. We prevented civil war. Another noble lowered his head. We also buried innocent lives. The Chancellor did not answer. Deep inside, even he knew that was true. Meanwhile, Elara and the Guardian reached the palace entrance. Guards immediately stepped aside. No one dared stop the great silver wolf anymore. Not after everything they had witnessed. The Alpha King emerged from the western corridor moments later. His eyes met Elara's. For the first time. Neither needed explanations. Both had discovered different pieces of the same truth. The Chancellor, they said together. The Guardian growled. The king nodded. He has the missing decree. Elara carefully held out the broken pendant. And I have this. The king's expression changed the moment he saw it. I've seen that before. When? My father carried a drawing of it. He once told me. If the pendant ever returned, so would the promise. Everything suddenly connected. The erased records. The hidden chambers. The Guardian's unwavering loyalty. The attacks. The memories. None of it had been random. It had all led to this moment. The doors of the Grand Assembly Hall burst open. The Alpha King entered first. The Guardian walked beside him. Elara followed quietly behind. Every noble inside the chamber stood in stunned silence. The Lord Chancellor did not move. He had expected this. My king, he said calmly. I wondered how long it would take. The Alpha King stepped toward the council table. His eyes never left the stolen decree. You erased our history. You hunted a child. You betrayed my father. The Chancellor slowly shook his head. I protected your throne. You protected your power, the king replied. A long silence followed. The Chancellor carefully opened the ancient decree. I suppose. There is no reason to hide it anymore. He began reading the forgotten oath aloud. Each sentence echoed through the chamber like a voice returning from another age. The first promise had never placed one family above another. It had united them. The Guardian had not belonged to the throne alone. It had sworn to defend both the Alpha bloodline and the family entrusted with preserving justice. Neither could stand without the other. The kingdom had remained strong only while that oath was honored. The room fell completely silent. Every noble realized the same terrible truth. The Guardian had never betrayed the throne. The throne had betrayed its own promise. The great silver wolf slowly walked toward Elara. Then, before the entire royal court, it lowered its head once again, not in submission, in recognition, as if declaring to every soul present that the forgotten oath had finally returned. And at that moment, the Alpha King understood exactly what kind of ruler he had to become. The Grand Assembly Hall remained silent long after the final words of the ancient decree echoed against its stone walls. No noble dared speak. No advisor attempted to defend the past. For generations, They had believed the Guardian existed only to protect the Alpha throne. Now they knew the truth. The throne had never stood alone. Its strength had always depended upon a promise shared with another family. A promise their ancestors had broken. The Alpha King slowly walked toward the council table. His gaze never left the Lord Chancellor. So it was true. The Chancellor lowered the decree onto the polished stone. It was. You knew. I did. You hid it. I did. Every confession struck the chamber with the weight of another stone. Yet the Chancellor's voice held no pride. Only exhaustion. He looked around the room. When I was a young councilman, the kingdom stood on the edge of civil war. Powerful families fought for the throne. Every border was under attack. If news of the first promise had spread, the kingdom would have torn itself apart. The Alpha King answered quietly. So you erased history. I buried it. You hunted a child. I believed it was necessary. Silence returned. For the first time in many years, the Chancellor looked older than his age. Not because of time, because of regret. He had convinced himself for 2 decades that he had protected the kingdom. No, he saw only the cost. The Alpha King slowly turned toward the gathered nobles. How many knew? No one answered. One elderly noble finally stepped forward. Very few. Most believed the official story. We obeyed because we feared another war. The king nodded. Fear. Everything had begun with fear. Fear had become lies. Lies had become betrayal. And betrayal had nearly destroyed the very kingdom they claimed to protect. The Guardian quietly walked across the chamber. Its enormous silver form stopped beside the ancient throne. For a long moment, it looked at the seat where generations of Alpha Kings had ruled. Turned away. Instead, it returned to Elara's side. The meaning was unmistakable. Power alone had never earned its loyalty. Compassion had. Elara looked down at the great wolf. Tears filled her eyes. You waited all this time. The Guardian gently rested its head against her shoulder. 20 years of waiting. 20 years of guarding forgotten memories. 20 years of carrying a promise no one else remembered. Blessed. Its burden was ending. The Alpha King stepped toward Elara. When the entire court expected him to stand above her, he did something no ruler had done before. He bowed his head. Not to a servant. Not to a noble. But to the living descendant of the first promise. Every person in the chamber gasped. The throne broke its oath, the king said. Today. It begins honoring it again. He turned toward the royal guards. The Lord Chancellor will answer for every life lost because of the truth he buried. No one resisted. The Chancellor slowly removed the chain of office from around his neck. He offered no defense, no plea. As the guards approached, he looked one final time at Elara. I thought I was saving the kingdom. Elara answered with quiet sadness. You cannot protect a kingdom by making it forget who it is. The old man closed his eyes. He had no reply. The guards gently led him away. Weeks passed. The castle slowly changed. The sealed archives were opened. The missing records were restored beside the surviving fragments. The story of the first promise spread throughout the kingdom. Not as a tale of shame, but as a lesson. Children learned that strength without kindness became tyranny. That truth hidden for fear eventually became suffering. That promises mattered only when they were kept. The Alpha King ordered a new monument raised in the royal gardens. Not to celebrate victory in battle, but to honor those who had protected the promise through sacrifice. At its center stood 2 symbols carved side by side. The royal crest, and the crescent moon embracing the ancient tree. No symbol stood above the other. Together, they formed one kingdom. Elara no longer lived among the forgotten servant quarters. Yet she refused titles or luxury. Each morning she still walked through the royal gardens. She still cared for injured animals. She still greeted servants with the same kindness she had shown before anyone knew her name. Nothing about her heart had changed. That was why the Guardian had chosen her. Not because of blood. Because compassion had survived where power had failed. The people slowly came to understand that as well. They no longer called her the servant girl. They called her the keeper of the promise. One quiet evening, the Alpha King stood beside Elara beneath the ancient oak where the Guardian had first brought her a white flower. The kingdom below was peaceful once again. For years, the king said softly, I believed leadership meant commanding loyalty. He looked toward the Guardian. It was trying to teach me something else. Elara smiled gently. Loyalty cannot be commanded. It has to be deserved. The king nodded. For perhaps the first time in his life, he truly understood. The Guardian slowly rose. Its silver coat glowed beneath the light of the full moon. It looked toward the distant mountains, then toward Elara, then toward the Alpha King. For the first time since the old promise had been restored, the ancient wolf gave a calm, peaceful howl. Not a warning, not a cry of grief. A farewell to a burden finally fulfilled. Across the kingdom, wolves answered from the forests and hills. Their voices carried through the night like a blessing. The Guardian had completed the oath it had protected for 20 long years. But before disappearing into the moonlit forest, it paused one final time. It looked back at the two people now standing side by side. Its amber eyes held quiet peace. Then it vanished among the silver trees. The Alpha King and Elara watched until the last glimpse of silver disappeared into the darkness. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. Some promises were never truly finished. They were simply entrusted to new hearts. And somewhere beyond the distant mountains, beneath another moon and another ancient forest, a lone wolf answered the Guardian's final call. The Alpha King looked toward the horizon. He understood that new challenges would one day come. But this time, the kingdom would face them with truth instead of fear. And that was the strongest promise of all.